What is the future of Israel? And I would argue it's not a very bright future. I talked about the fault lines inside the society before and what that means for the future. I think all of this war, it really spooks people.
So, according to this guy, Israel is doomed. Did you hear this? Not from the Israelis, of course, but from some outsider who really, really understands what's going on here. We're doomed. And let's hear what these idiots have to say for themselves.
In my opinion, inside Greater Israel today, you have probably about 7.3 million Palestinians and about
But obviously, it's still a genocide. We're just getting rid of them. That's how there are so many of them.
7.3 million Jews. And if they expel all the Palestinians like they want to, you'd probably have 7.3 million Jews. But the other
Note how no one's really talked about us expelling all of the Palestinians. There's been a conversation of maybe the people in Gaza, okay, which are about 2 million, not 7.3 million, who have continuously shown that they are not actually safe and they are a liability to the danger of Israel by publicly declaring that they want to take over the country of Israel and have attempted to do so on many, many occasions, specifically on October 7th. These people are being discussed being relocated potentially so that Gaza could maybe be rebuilt, or maybe there'll be some sort of other solution, but no one has talked about removing the Palestinians or the Gazans or whatever you would call them who live in Judea and Samaria, which is probably what he's referring to, even though I happen to think these numbers might be a little bit inflated.
question you have to ask yourself is, what's going to happen to all those Israeli Jews?
What's going to happen to all the Israeli Jews if 7.3 million Palestinians who have been trying to kill us consistently stop? Maybe a life without terror. That would be interesting. I wonder how that would feel to wake up and not think about the fact that maybe I'll get stabbed today when I'm driving with my baby down the road.
Over time, how many are going to stay there?
How many are going to stay in Israel? Let's see what you have to say, you wonderful genius, you who seems to have such a deep understanding of the psyche of Israel.
You've already left. How many will leave when the shooting stops?
Did you know that during the war, so many people moved to Israel? Did you know this? And in fact, there was a statistic that came out that a lot of people left Israel, but that was actually not true. That was the Russians and the Ukrainians who immigrated here during the war, yes, because we take in people who are being impacted negatively, who aren't trying to kill us. That's a small caveat on that note. They were the ones who left during the war, not actually Israelis. So many Israelis have stayed, and so many more Jews from across the world have actually moved here during a conflict. But he forgot that important fact.
What is the future of Israel? And I would argue it's not a very bright future. I talked about the fault lines inside the society before and what that means for the future. I think all of this war, it really spooks people. And when
Does it? Which people? Who? Show me the droves of Israelis that are leaving during this war. In fact, the point of this war is that most people are hoping that it will now be safer. But despite the fact that it wasn't safe, and it's not ever really been safe here in Israel, Jews still live here. It's amazing. Where is the premise for this argument coming from?
you see that you have neighbors that have missiles that can hit you, and you get into fights like the fight that the Israelis just got into with the Iranians, you want to ask yourself, what are the consequences of that for the population?
I mean, most other people would run away and escape, but since the Jews have nowhere better to go, because it's been proven to us time and time again that when we live in a different country, they persecute us. Okay, and watch what's happening in America, which is the land of the free. They're coming after the Jews. Terror is going up by the hundreds of percent everywhere. Jews are still coming to Israel because despite the fact that there are missiles directed at us continuously, we are clever and intelligent and sophisticated, and we are building out systems to defend ourselves, which is why things like a war on Hamas are so important, to remove these enemy threats. Why are you coming into this conversation with this kind of assumption that the Israelis are just sitting around? Oh, we're at war. Where can we escape to? We have nowhere to escape to. Israel is our home. Israel will always be our home. That is the entire point, and therefore people who really threaten our home need to be eliminated.
People leave? Are people going to go to Israel? I wouldn't bet a lot of money on that.
Why? Why wouldn't you bet money on it? Our stock markets are better than ever. There are droves of people trying to come, even during the conflict. Do you know that if you try and get a flight right now, it is impossible because every Every airline is packed, jammed. And yes, airlines have stopped. Some airlines have, but the people wanting to come here hasn't. Huge amounts of tourists are still coming to Israel every single day because people want to come. Because people want to come. Because people want to see the miracle that is our country. Why is he making this stuff up? You see, he's clearly not an Israeli. He's clearly some elitist American sitting around prancing and thinking that he knows everything because he wouldn't come to visit. But us, we're good. We're chilling.
I wouldn't be surprised if a good number of people leave because they just don't feel safe there.
You wouldn't be surprised by it? No, you would leave because you're a coward. But we aren't leaving. Like, he's literally making this up and talking as if he's kind of got really real legitimacy and facts behind him. But he doesn't. It's amazing. It's amazing. He's getting on this show. There's hundreds of thousands of views on this as he talks to this person who clearly, I don't even know her name, but she does not like us. She doesn't like the Israelis. And she's acting as if he has knowledge on the psyche of the Israeli people. I don't know who he is, but he doesn't, because this does not reflect the reality of anyone that I know. And I would wager that I know more Israelis than him, seeing as I am Israeli.
And by the way, we were talking about the possibility of Iran getting nuclear weapons. What if Iran gets nuclear weapons and at the same time...
What if Iran gets nuclear weapons? Have you not noticed? Look what you're doing. You're making this out to be that, oh, maybe Iran's going to get nuclear weapons. Oh, and Israel kind of got itself into a fight with Iran. We are not going to allow for nuclear weapons. That's why we were at war with Iran. That's why we're still at war with Iran. Because they want us out and we're not going to allow that. And did you not see the intelligence and the sophistication and the abilities that we have in Iran? Because we are aware of the threat and we are doing everything in our power to make sure it doesn't happen. So why are you talking as if we're just sitting around waiting for Iran to get a nuclear threat and as if we're going to allow that? Have you missed the entire point of the war?
Israel and Iran continue to have poisonous relations between the two countries. Would you want to live in Israel? I'm not sure about that. You know, it's the size of a postage stamp, and you have this country, Iran, and we're hypothesizing that it might have a couple of nuclear weapons.
You wouldn't live in this country. You, my friend, because again, you're a white coward old man who's sitting in the comfort of his home talking about a conflict that he clearly doesn't understand. And whilst we're on the point of Israel being the size of a post-it note, why are you so obsessed with us? Why do you care? Why are you talking for us? Why?
This is not a good situation. Anyway, I
agree with you on that. It's not a good situation, but good thing that the Israelis are doing something about it.
think that if you look at this country, it does not have a bright future. Now, I think that Benjamin Netanyahu would disagree with that.
No, really. Our prime minister, who's actually the one defending the country, would have something different to say than you? Oh, wow, what a shocker. Maybe it's because he actually knows something about the reality on the ground here.
He would tell people that if you follow my policies and the Americans support us hook, line, and sinker, we're going to create a greater Israel and live happily ever after. But I don't think so.
So it's kind of his mistake, his strategic mistake, you think, is relying on the goodwill or the unwavering support of the West? Because part of me thinks maybe it is rational because no one is standing up to this starvation, to this like genocidal behavior that invokes so many comparisons to the Holocaust. And I have to say that...
Does it? Does it invoke so many comparisons to the Holocaust? Did you put pressure on the Germans? Did America, did the whole world call out the Germans for not feeding? Did you guys not feed the Nazis? Where was the pressure on you? Where was the pressure on you to make sure that the Germans had all the food that they need? Yeah, this is the same exact thing as the Holocaust. There are similarities with the Holocaust. Are you nuts?
I'm working on this documentary about Holocaust survivors speaking out against the genocide. And I've interviewed people who are survivors, the children of survivors, but also people who are just involved in the Middle East. And I
bet you're doing that because you don't have enough survivors. That's probably the reason. Because there aren't going to be a huge amount of survivors who believe very, very strongly that what's happening in Gaza is genocide. You see, here's the thing about Holocaust survivors. They actually understand why Israel is so important. They get it because they were actually persecuted. They're the Jews who experienced what happened. And so, yes, you may find a few people who are self-hating Jews, and that is a thing. Self-hating Jews is a reality that we have seen. I mean, look at Dave Smith. There are people out there who think that if they just hate on the Jewish people, on the Israeli people, because of their own identity, then they'll get away with the fact that the world will potentially not hate them as much. They think that if they just lick the butts of the people who hate them, then maybe potentially they'll hate them less. They'll learn their lesson. That's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. The Jews who loved the Germans and who sucked up to the Germans, they were also killed in concentration camps. The Jewish people who are actually living in reality are not self-hating, but the self-hating Jews do exist, and some of them are Holocaust survivors, and that's sad. And that's really, really, really not ideal for anyone. But their children don't speak on behalf of the most of the 6 million people who died, and they definitely don't speak on behalf of the Israelis who live here and who know the reality of what's going on. But obviously you had to find a way to make this about the few fringe Jews that you could find who are going to speak out against Israel.
Interviewed Daniel Levy the other day, who used to be an Israeli negotiator. He's English, but he spent a lot of time in Israel. And he said that, he used to always avoid comparisons between the Nazis and Israelis, and that is very forbidden, verboten, right? Israel, you're not allowed to do that. Only Israel can weaponize the Holocaust. No one else can use it. So they get to call other people Nazis. They get to call Hamas Nazis, but you can't make any parallels. But what Daniel Levy said was that it's almost like Israel's daring people to compare them to the Nazis with their act.
Who's daring that? Who? What are you talking about? What actually are you talking about? We want to be called Nazis? This is one of the most insensitive arguments that I've ever heard. And did you notice her smile? Her really, really cynical, they're the only ones. They're the only ones who are allowed to use the Holocaust. First of all, it would make sense that the Jewish people who suffered through the Holocaust should be the ones who kind of really talk about it in a way that they know what they're talking about, because it is our experience. It's our grandparents' experience, and we have the first-hand knowledge of it. But I don't think that we have a right to own the conversation around the Holocaust, and I would never say that. I don't think we have the right to it. I think everyone can talk about it. But there is a few massive distinctions to be made between the Nazis and between the Jewish people right now, and between the Israel army, a massive, massive amount. And there are a lot more comparisons that could be made between Hamas and the Nazis, like a government who really, really, really makes its whole country suffer because of some crazy idealism to take over the world. That actually sounds a lot more like Hamas and radical Islam than it sounds like Israel, who's basically saying, just let us live in peace. We are going to defend our borders as long as you don't let us live in peace. The comparison is offensive, and it's more importantly, because it doesn't matter if it offends me personally, it's actually inaccurate. It is wrong, and all blaming of genocidal behavior goes to one place only, Hamas. Them you should compare to Nazis, because there is a lot more similarities there.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the key piece here, by the way, I've read a number of pieces by Daniel, and I know him quite well, have great respect for him. But the key piece is the writings, or the key pieces of the writings of Omer Bartov, who was an Israeli by birth, served in the IDF, and has been a historian of the Holocaust at Brown University for a long time. I actually have taught his books over time in my classes, and he is highly regarded. And he has said that he believes that what the Israelis are doing is a Holocaust or is a genocide.
Yeah.
And that really, I think, has had a big...
You know what? Okay, you found an Israeli who believes this. Why don't you present the arguments of the people who are saying that this is not true? Why don't you present the majority of Israelis? Why don't you even bring one person? Just bring an example of one person who's highly regarded, who's saying that there isn't a genocide. No, you won't, because that won't fit your narrative, would it? So you managed to find the fringe voice, the kind of one lone angry PTSD person who's willing to speak out against Israel to prove your point, but you haven't provided the argument for the other side, which, by the way, as a professor, which I now understand that you are, you probably should consider doing, because that's called intellectual integrity.
Impact. And of course, all sorts of individuals and organizations with real standing, like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, various people and the United Nations have said that this is a Holocaust or a genocide. And so I think that label is now beginning to stick in ways that leaves many Israelis, and certainly the Israeli government, very uncomfortable. And
No, it doesn't. It actually doesn't. Not many Israelis and not the Israeli government. No one here feels uncomfortable with the terms of genocide. You know why? Because it is just so factually inaccurate and it's a buzzword used by the enemy. It is so clear to us that the propaganda is working on people like you. Look, they've declared publicly that they came after university professors like 50 years ago to try and convince them that they would start teaching this kind of anti-Israel wokey mentality. And I'm willing to bet that this guy has some kind of woke thing going on behind the scenes, specifically in his university campuses. They said the professors that were the first people that they were going to go for, and clearly it worked. But no, Israelis don't feel uncomfortable with the term genocide because we know what a genocide is and we know that that's not what's going on in Gaza, and so therefore we're actually very, very comfortable with the fact that you guys have made up this word and applied it in the wrong location, and that is your problem, not ours.
they'll go to great lengths to cut against that. But the more this goes on, the more difficult that becomes. And you want to remember here, we just want to think about this just when we're assessing the strategy. What's the ending here?
Yeah.
How does this end? I'm hoping every day, I hope that Trump moves in and says enough is enough.
Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. In fact, Trump about 10 minutes ago released something saying that he's very upset about the hunger in Gaza, and he's correct to be upset about the hunger in Gaza. And so therefore they should eradicate Hamas, because Hamas are really bad at feeding their civilians despite the huge amounts of aid that we've provided. But Trump actually understands things in a little bit more of a sophisticated way than you do, and he has actually seen the truth and he gets what's going on, and he realizes that all of the responsibility for everything that's happening needs to be put on the genocidal maniacs called Hamas.
And the Israelis are forced to accept a ceasefire. And
We are agreeing to a ceasefire, darling. We have agreed to a ceasefire. Multiple ceasefires. We have bent over backwards, and it is in fact the US administration that has publicly announced that Hamas are the ones who don't allow for a ceasefire. Why don't you talk about the truth? Why don't you put Hamas on the table? Why don't you even bring them up properly? Why are you always going to directly to the Israelis? The Israelis should agree to a ceasefire. The Israelis are doing a genocide. The Israelis. Focus on Hamas. Talk about them. See what they're doing wrong. Why don't we just bring that into the conversation, and maybe this will start to make sense to you, and you can stop making up lies about how Israelis just really want to leave.
supply trucks flow into Gaza. Let's assume that happens.
There are trucks. Tons of trucks. Almost 1,000 trucks outside, right on the border, waiting to go in, and guess who's not distributing them? Let me see. Can you figure it out? Hamas.
That would be wonderful in a certain sense, but at the same time, it hardly goes anyways towards solving the basic problem.
The basic problem being that the Palestinians want to kill all of the Israelis and the anti-Semites want the Jews out of the world. That's the problem. You're right. It wouldn't solve that. Israel agreeing to a ceasefire wouldn't solve that. Neither would the aid to these people. It wouldn't solve that either. None of that would solve the fact that the Palestinians just want to murder all of the Israelis. None of it.
These people have no homes. Gaza's been made unlivable.
Yes.
They really have no place to go.
Which is why we're suggesting sending them elsewhere, but you obviously are against that idea, so you want them to just live in the midst of our homes so that they can try and kill us more.
Unless the Madagascar option is realized. And
It wasn't Madagascar, by the way. There's like 15 countries that are on the table.
don't think that's going to happen either.
They might, if Trump puts enough pressure.
Uh,
Egypt could do it as well, by the way. There's a massive Sinai desert that we gave back to them because we're idiots, and we gave them locations that we shouldn't have, but we did, so why don't they just move there? Why don't you build them some houses over there? That's a good idea. Why don't you take your time and leave this stupid session, which clearly you have no idea what you're talking about, and go do something useful, like build Gazans homes.
But what's the end result here? And, you know, the Israelis don't like the idea of having 7.3 million Palestinians.
No, the end result here is peace through strength. The end result is that we take away the military abilities to kill us, and despite the fact that they still really want to kill us, and by the way, had I don't want to say been intelligent, but had we really, really not been interested in the Palestinians and really been interested in genocide, this whole war would have been over about 650 days ago. If Israelis didn't care about lives, we wouldn't have cared about the hostages, and we wouldn't have cared about the Palestinians, and we could have just obliterated them. But that never happened. What's going to happen is a demilitarization of the people who really, really want to kill us, and hopefully some form of de-radicalization or removal from our borders. And that's going to have to be the strategy. And Israel is going to have to continue to keep the war and the people at arms level, somewhat deterred, but also incapable of attacking us. That's what's going to happen, because this idea of peace is somewhat of an illusion. Not because I don't believe in peace, not because I don't want peace. I love peace. Look, we're at peace with the Druze. You know, they're an offshoot of Islam. They live in our country. They serve in our wars. And we're friends with them. And we actually go out and defend them in Syria. Like, we actually do things to help the people who support us. Unfortunately, the Palestinians want all of us death. So the solution to this is not going to be so easy. But we are going to have to say that if we want some form of peace, it's going to come through strength. It's going to come through Iran understanding that if they want to fire ballistic missiles at us, we are going to eviscerate them from the inside out. And now they're starting to understand that a little bit. But guess what? Because this is a conversation of radical religion jihadis, they're going to keep on going because they kind of believe that no matter what, they'll eventually succeed. Unfortunately for them, we have the Bible on our side and we have the truth on our side, and we know that the Israeli people, no matter what, the Jewish people, no matter what, are not going to be eviscerated. We are going to live forever and ever and ever. We have survived every form of persecution, and this is going to be no different. And now, thankfully, we have our own land, thanks to the goodness of our God and to the strength of the IDF. And that, my friend, is going to continue.
In their midst. Okay, but you can't get rid of them. Therefore, you have 7.3 million Palestinians inside your borders, and those people are living in the most horrible of conditions.
Not true. Not true. Watch the videos online. Remember how they all told us that Gaza was a prison before, but now they upload content of Gaza was my beautiful home and now it's a prison? Yeah, that's what they do here as well. Do you know that if you go to hospital, almost everybody there, every single one of the doctors is an Israeli Arab? And if you look at societies, the people who get to become doctors are not normally the people who are being murdered in the genocide. They're the people who are given benefits and accommodations and are allowed to study, because being a doctor is actually a really sophisticated and complicated thing, and Israel supports that. There are doctors, they're pharmacists, they're business owners. They are so hyper involved in our country. They have beautiful homes, a lot of them. They have beautiful societies. They build these big houses. There's so many Palestinians here who live in freedom. And yet you're not going to mention that, will ya? You probably don't even know, because you've probably never been here.
What does this mean? The world is going to mobilize against you. Maybe the U.S. government will protect you, and it will limit the leverage of the so-called international community. But nevertheless, the consequences for your country are going to be horrific, right? The moral stain on your reputation is going to be huge.
Do you love her face? She's like, actually, she's like sympathetic for the Israelis. Oh, the moral stain on the Israelis. She looks so sad for us. There's some sympathy for us. Oh, it's so nice to receive a little bit of sympathy. Thank you, KT, whatever your name is.
And what does that mean for people who live inside Israel? And furthermore, just to take this a step further, because we want to think about...
Oh, let's take it a step further, because you're so wrong on the first step. Maybe the second step will help.
Where this train is headed. What about the lobby? You know, the lobby is already overexposed from its own point of view. It's out in the open.
Okay, so let's just jump to conspiracy theories now.
It's playing smash mouth politics. It's acting in ways that are fundamentally at odds with basic American values like freedom of speech,
Right.
freedom of assembly. Is the lobby going to be forced to continue acting this way?
The lobby be forced. As if... But
For year after year? This will be disastrous.
I...
The United States. This is a terrible situation inside the United States. The situation with the lobby is terribly unhealthy for liberal America. And I don't mean liberal in...
Right, which is potentially possibly true, but also part of the reason why the Republicans won, because the Americans are a little bit over the liberal American. They're just a little bit over you nutsos who believe in woke, crazy things like little kids having gender operations. They're a little over you. That's why Trump's in power.
The sense of the liberal Democratic Party. I mean, liberal in the Lockean sense of the term. Liberal in the sense that we're all part of a liberal society. Having the lobby, act the way it's been acting in recent years for the foreseeable future would be disastrous.
For who? Okay, you've said it multiple times. The lobby in this would be dissolved. Context, information, facts, truth, reality. Anything? I'm waiting.
So if you sort of think about where we are and how we get out of this, I don't see any solution at all.
Well, that's unfortunate for you, mister, but honestly, I actually can't listen to you anymore because you're exhausting me, emotionally draining me, and boring me because you're not providing any sort of facts or any sort of information. You just come in with your prancy, hi, I'm a university professor who pretends to understand everything about Israel because I read a book by an anti-Semite once and therefore I know everything that's going on, and let me speak on behalf of Israel and talk about how they're doomed instead of actually look at the realities and the stock market and what's going on and the people and the immigrations and the numbers and the successes that we've had in the military. Let's just not look at any of that and talk about the fact that they're causing a genocide. How are they going to live with this moral stain? Ugh. Unbelievable. And she's honestly done such a bad job at interviewing. Look, if you're a liberal and you're a lefty and you're anti-Israel, I mean, that's your right, but at least do a job of like responding and trying to like provide information instead of looking happy and looking sad. I don't know how this girl's got so many followers, but good for her, providing and spewing hate and incorrect information left, right, and center. And on that note, I'm Meira, okay? This is Radically Rational, where we provide rational and radical information to you in a way that actually makes sense. See you in the next video.